Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Walker Bee Ranch. Oh, I'm sorry, at another episode of Sawmill Charlie's Sawmill. As you can see behind me, we took a bit of a road trip this weekend and came up to Maryland to see our good buddy Charlie. And man, am I enjoying it up here. Speak of the devil, look, there he is. He's getting ready to give us a tour of the place, and we're gonna take a look around. This ain't your backyard sawmill here, ladies and gentlemen. Man, that's
the carriage where the logs lay on it, and then
wood stove.
So the logs come in on this deck. This chains move, so they bring them in. These are stop and go. That turns up and grabs the log and then flips it down. And then if you walk around here, Bob, and watch yourself. This is the log turner. It's an arm that comes up out of there hydraulically, kind of like a chainsaw chain, and it grabs the log and it turns the log. It's a hydraulic turner. All that,
and that's a mound of sawdust. So who's the guy that sits here and shovels all that in there?
Well, we don't. We just let it sit here. Sawdust goes out of the blade, goes up the elevator, out into a cart, and then we take the cart up to another building and dump it inside to keep it dry.
See, he didn't know I was interviewing for the position.
Here's the, here's our saw. It's about, this one here, I think it's a 56-inch saw. We just put brand new teeth in it yesterday. My brother worked on that yesterday.
How often do you have to do something like that?
Well, you might, if you're sawing hard and you have to sharpen a lot, the teeth will last a couple of weeks maybe.
A couple weeks? How long does it take to replace them things?
Maybe an hour, because you see there's the shank and the tooth. So this is replaceable. This shank here is kind of like a centric. It goes in there and it locks it in. The shank is wider in thousandths of an inch than the body of the saw. This is what scrapes the sawdust out and throws the sawdust out. As time progresses over several years, the body of the shank gets thin, and you got to put new shanks in it. And they're getting quite expensive.
Like everything.
Everything else.
Yeah, that's the lumber.
So then
this is our controller.
So, all right, so let me get this right. The log comes in here.
Yep.
It gets flipped over.
And then, of course, the carriage, which is up there, is back here.
Okay.
It's running up on like a train track.
This right here.
Yeah, that goes back.
Ah, okay, so.
That's going back and forth. The log lays
on these cables.
It's being pulled by cable. It goes back and forth.
It picks up a log.
And then we move. We have this. We have buttons here that I can hit a button, and I can have a preset of, let's say it wants to saw a 1-inch board off. It'll push it out 1.25 inches because the saw takes about 1/4 inch of sawdust out, and we can saw the board off.
And then it runs down there.
As we want to turn the square, we can use the turner there and keep turning it and manipulating it and stuff like that.
So, at being a total noob, so this carrier comes down here. Stops, picks up the
log,
rolls on, you slice it.
Then we slice the bark off. We square that log from a round log.
Then you bring it all the way back here. And flip it again.
Well, it can either flip it, once we get it turned and got all the sides and we got it squared up, then we can start sawing boards.
Yep, then they look like that.
Well, that's a board. We'll take that board and maybe cut 2x6s out of it or something. Actually, right now we have orders for some 6x6s, so maybe we can get 2 6x6s out of that.
This is cool.
So let's go around from the other side for a better perspective.
See, Ian could be out here with his cup of Timmy's in the snow.
Here's a.
Let me set my
back up
drink down.
Roll this out for you.
And you are 6 what?
I'm 5'10".
5'10"?
That's one blade. That's about a 56-inch blade.
Bet you that thing costs as much as a easy hive lifter.
It costs a little bit more than a hive lifter.
So now we know why it took him 2 years. He had to get a blade. Get yourself?
Almost got me. A little bit, not much. Yeah, brand new.
Which way are we going? There we go.
I used to be security at a lumberyard. Yeah.
So boards and boards and boards.
So there's a small saw there. It's 30 inches. It goes on the automatic slab saw that cuts up the firewood for us automatically.
How long have you been working at the sawmill, Charlie? Long enough to know to have Band-Aids in your pocket.
I don't normally handle the blades, and those blades are not normally brand new teeth either. But that one happened to be one. So here's the carriage. These move back and forth.
For your width.
So, yeah, and also for the logs to lay on the knees here. These are called dogs. They're spikes. There's a spike on the bottom and a spike on the top. So it sits there and grabs the log like that.
Okay.
Each one of these will move in and out separately by 3 or 4 inches. So, you know, a log is, the one end's big, the other end's smaller, so it's tapered. So you have to taper, you have to push the log out in order to square it up to the saw and all that. Or if, let's say you got a board and it's a situation where maybe there's a knot, a rotten knot, and you want to push the board out. So you start out here with sawdust at one end, and then you come back like a wedge.
Right.
Just get rid of
the
trash. You know, the knot might be rotten knot or something. And then you can make a square board off the rest of it. And then everybody talks about, how do you measure? Well, you barely can see it, but it's a round dial. It's 36 inches, so this will move back.
And as it moves, it tells
moves,
you.
That pointer moves around. We got a new dial. We just haven't put it on it yet. So the lumber and the firewood and everything comes down through here. Now here's a piece of firewood. You know, it was a trim piece because you can see it angled. We had probably a big piece that was sawed on this other saw that we'll show later. And he needed to do a skimming to make it 90-degree square. So this is a skim board.
Sell that to the Amish guys. Shakes for the roof.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, that's kind of what that is. Anyway, we throw it into this machine. We got a belt there. And then inside there you can see the blade. These bars move up. They're a hold down device. They move up out of the way. The saw retracts back into the machine. The board comes down through here, passes underneath this area here, and then it hits this gate. And when it pulls the gate, there's a switch there. The belt stop. These bars come down to hold it so the board don't twist. And then the saw goes through it and cuts it off. And it monitors the RPMs of the saw. So let's say it hits a knot and its saw starts to slow down because the knot's hard. It knows to back that saw up, get the RPMs back up, and then go again. So it'll go in and out until it gets through that knot. Not, you know, and all that. And then this here is our non-OSHA approved trim saw. This is what I used to do when I was about 8 years old. You put a block on the floor, and before we had this machine here, we used to have an elevator with a spot between the rollers open.
Right.
And I would sit here and cut firewood and it would go down into the elevator now. Well, now we have that machine here. So this is just a trim saw. So it's, you know, it'll trim a 12 to 12.
Do you guys sell a lot of firewood here? You'd have to get smaller logs.
Yeah, I sell a lot of truckloads. It's like we got a bolt problem too. Yeah. And then in latter years, let me turn some lights on. In latter years, this here is a hog grinder. It is a grinder. It makes mulch, basically. If we have pine that nobody likes to have for firewood, we have those small little scraps there. Nobody wants to pick that up out of a wood pile for firewood. So it goes up, it drops straight down, and there's a set of shearing knives in there.
Gets ground up.
And it gets ground up, and then this tube that goes the full length of the building, about 90-some feet, it'll blow the chips outside into a box, which drops down into a pot.
And then people come and buy.
And then I sell it for mulch. This mulch here is solid stuff, so it's chippy.
Right.
It doesn't have a lot of fines in it, and it's, I'll say, light colored. I just call it white mulch. It's not brown looking. And it's good for walking paths, swing sets, and even around the flowers. Some people have gotten used to looking at the white mulch. It doesn't have the fines in it to where it lets the seeds germinate as easy.
Okay.
So it's actually better than the darker mulch that is more fine. And then we also sell that. We have a tub grinder that we bought here a couple of years ago, and it's grinding up wood blocks like that. And then it also will, the bark and stuff that falls off. So it kind of grinds into more of a powdery consistency.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that's pretty efficient because you're utilizing every piece of the wood.
There's people come here and they say about your scrap. I said, we don't have any scrap.
Right.
I said, I sell the lumber, I sell the sawdust, and if it doesn't make those three things,
It's mulch.
then it goes into a mulch, and I sell the mulch. And there's pretty much, that's it. There's no waste factor here at all. And then they'll talk about, like, they're looking for, like, cutoffs. I said, I make the 2x4. I don't
Right.
utilize the 2x4 where I'm cutting it off.
Right.
I'm making it, and it goes out to the customer, and it's done. I don't really do 2x4s. I do more of trailer floors for equipment trailers to haul, let's say, a bulldozer.
Right.
It's real thick and heavy. Sideboards for your dump trucks. Blocking. One company just called us for some 16-inch by 16-inch by 2-foot long blocking. They work on heavy-duty construction equipment, so they need blocks to raise the machine up maybe to get underneath of it, you know, and that kind of stuff.
Pretty big place.
Yeah, it's the mill.
It's the mill.
The mulch piles. This here is the chippy mulch, which is kind of white looking, a lot more wood product in it, and the other stuff over to the far is darker. It has bark that's been ground, it's fall off the trees along with wood, and it's just a darker mulch. It's a finer mulch.
So people just bring their pickup trucks here, and you're like,
Yeah,
they load it up, and
I'll either load it up with a front end loader tractor, or I will deliver with one of my trucks.
look,
And there's a honey sign.
he sells honey over here. Local honey sign. Charlie, I never knew you did bees and honey.
Yeah. Ready?
Yep.
All right, this is the dry lumber area where we stack the lumber and we put 1x1 sticks in it, every 2 foot apart. When you're drying lumber, it takes a year for a board to get from the sawmill to the shelf when it comes to cabinet grade lumber. So the process is you saw it, we call it sticking it. You have to let it air dry for 4 to 6 months. Moisture content will come down to between 15 and 12% moisture content. Then we have to put it inside of a kiln where you cook it for 4 to 6 weeks at least, depending on the species, and that will bring it down to 6 to 8% moisture content. Then it's ready to build your cabinet project out of it. and all. So it takes at least 10 months to a year to get that board ready for that process.
Machine after
Let me
machine.
grab some more lights.
Actually, this is it's pretty good on the GoPro. So this is underneath those piles of sticked lumber outside.
All right, we're in the dry shed here where we store the dry lumber and we process it sometimes. All right, we were talking about the tapered bars on them top bar highs. This here is the molder. It's a 5-headed molder. It's got 5 cutting heads. So the lumber, you get it, 2 inches by 2 inches. You have this table in the back here lowers up and down for the depth of the cut. Usually you just set it where it's skimming it. It runs across this cutter here. It skims the bottom, so it makes a flat board. Then you have a right-hand cutter and a left-hand cutter that cuts the sides. Now that's where you would put those profiles to make the angle. Then you have a top head cutter here, which would be just a flat knife on that situation where you're making a top cut, making it a certain thickness.
Almost like a planer.
Well, that's what this is. It's a very precision planer. Then you have the last cutter head. There's another one here which skims the board 30 seconds of an inch maybe, because when you're running across this cast iron table you have to use an oil called Waxlight. It comes from Germany. It doesn't hurt the wood as far as staining, but it skims that little bit of coating off with that bottom head. And if you're doing, let's say, flooring, left and right head is your tongue and the groove head. Most flooring has the grooves underneath of it for the bottom. That's where that head would go. That last head would have these special cutters that would cut those grooves. So when you start out with a rough board at one end, it comes out at the other end with this machine completely done. It's a production machine. It's got these pipes up here. It's got a blower. The blower up there is about 4.5 feet in diameter, and it sucks the air. Air sucks all these chips off as fast as they're coming off the blades and blows them into a building. You got to have that, or the chips will lay on the product that you have, and it'll make it indentations and make it bad looking. So, 5-headed molder. It's a German machine. It's in fat. Well, this one's graduated. All these. It's intimidating looking, but you only have to use 2 or 3 of these. And these numbers, they're all in thousandths of an inch. So my background in machine shop, in the metal machine shop business, came in handy. I call this the milling machine of the wood shop, because I can keep everything in tolerance within. I like it within 10 thousandths of an inch, which is about thickness of 2 sheets of notebook paper. And I usually keep it within 5, which is one piece of notebook paper, which is, you can make moldings on it. You can make crown molding if you have the cutters to do all this. And when you're trying to put 2 pieces of crown molding that have to match on an angle, let's say where they butt together on a 45,
they got to be precise.
It's got to be precise, because the more precise you are, the better it looks.
Right.
If it's off of a 16th, you can see that. This here is one of our newer machines. We've had it about 5 years or so. It's a wide belt sander. It sands the boards for you. It's more of a convenience for our customer. It's not really a real money maker. It is 42 inches wide. We bought it. It's got some issues about the counter and we're trying to get fixed. Basically it's a plastic gear that's broken. We got to get it. One guy said he could make one out of a print, maybe
3D printer or
3D
something.
printer, maybe, I don't know. So it still works, and we use it somewhat. Then over here, I showed Ricky this when he was here. This is a straight line rip saw. This is made by my brother. My brother and father were really good engineers, and And this fence here, where your board pushes up against, moves back and forth. It's retractable, runs by a hydraulic motor. You run with this lever here. Mostly all this stuff we either bought the steel or we had motor parts given to us. And then what it is, it's based on a gang saw where you have this blade is stationary. This blade is movable, going in and out. So if it's set up right now, probably let's say 5 inches or 6 inches wide. So if your board's out through there and it's got a bow in it, let's say it's touching here and there, and it's got a 1/2 inch gap in the middle, I can move that fence back. This is a laser beam light that puts a red laser line on there, and I can go back to where it goes past that top of that bow, as I know where I'm at, and then when I run it through,
you have a
the
perfect
board comes out
6 inch.
over there perfectly straight, or relatively straight.
Right.
Once I do it with this machine, a lot of times when I straighten it like that, then it's ready for the molder. If I'm doing a project, let's say for flooring, you know, where you're turning and grooving. The lumber has to be pretty precise before it goes through that. It's not a machine that hogs or, you know, takes a lot of material off. It's more of a fine finish machine. So that's how that works. They got a little blower over there that sucks the sawdust. You'd be amazed how much sawdust comes off of 2 little blades. Like I say, this is our dry lumber over there. On the wall is hard maple, comes from around Vermont. We go to a lumber broker to get that. This right here is Douglas fir. It's 1 16-foot piece and 1 8-foot piece. It's for a cross on the side of a church. And it came from Washington. There's a company in Washington, D.C. They get the lumber from the West Coast, probably out there in Washington State. And it's already been milled from out there. So this is a special order where I ordered in from that broker, and then I resell it to the construction guy. And then these 2 big boxes where you have the hinges, there are kilns. That's the box that cooks the wood. And what we'll do is like this stack of lumber right here, except for that top pack up there. If you took that off, I would have a stack of lumber that tall inside that box, 2 stacks deep, just like it is right there. Probably take that pack and put it on the top of this.
It'd be ready to go in.
And that whole pack would stay inside the cooker.
For how long?
4 to 6 weeks, depending on what type of lumber it is and how thick it is. So, inside the box, we would take that pack and there would be a curtain, and we would divide the pack in half. And then, I don't know whether you can hear it right now, but that roar is 2 big 16-inch fans in there on a board crossed. It's a solid board out of plywood. So it circulates the air through the lumber and around in a circling motion. And then there's a unit in there, basically a huge dehumidifier. And as the temperature rises to probably over 120 degrees over a period of time, you build the heat up gradually. But basically the wood sweats, and the moisture gets into the air, and of course the dehumidifier sucks the water out of the air.
Keeps it from reabsorbing.
And when you put the fresh pack of lumber in there like that, within a day or 2, you'll have 50 gallons of water coming out of that pack of lumber. And it gets minimal amounts every time, but that's how that works.
I noticed that when I was building B boxes last time, when I lasered the ends of them and then didn't put them together for several months, that they were much different to put together than.
Oh yeah, they're dry.
Yeah, it's much different.
So this lumber sitting down here has been dried. Was talking about the little wood miser band mill. This is that the guy brought in these great big pieces years ago. He finally got around to cutting them up because he's rebuilding an old house. That's his lumber right there on top of that. Needs to go into the kiln and because it's like 12% moisture content. It's higher than what he wants for a house. So we got to cook that. And another forklift here, and here's our lumber piles. I've got oak, I've got poplar. In the back I have walnut and cherry. And then there's another set of racks over here that has some thicker oak and some ash and some white oak and some lower grade cherry.
What's the gray ones?
That is where it sat outside underneath that area where it's been air dried, and the rain rains on it like that, and it'll turn it that way over about 6 months.
Like a porch.
Like a porch.
when you put a
It
brand
gives you
deck
that
on it.
silvery look, which everybody likes.
Yeah,
But as soon as you touch it with a saw, it goes away.
yeah.
And it's probably only on the outer edge within about 6 inches. It's not the whole board. They all want that gray look, but I can't. If I could figure out how to do that with a piece of paint or something, I'd be a millionaire.
Eco wood.
And like this lumber here, it's cherry. We sold it for somebody. He's air dried it or dried it, I think, and now he wants me to plane it. So I'll probably get that done next week. These are more stacks of lumber that we can draw from. You know, we just don't put everything on the shelf. Here's some 2-inch oak in the rough. There's some 2-inch poplar in the rough. And then we can walk along this way. This is actually some soft maple that I buy in. Here's some cherry. Here's some walnut. There's a wide board there, which is poplar, which usually I can get a few of them occasionally, not too often. And then we have pine. I buy that in, it's clear pine. It amazes me that you can still find trees that are that perfectly clear, finding the lumber like that. Of course, you have to pay a premium for it. This is southern yellow pine. I buy this in stair treads.
I got a bunch of those you can buy from me.
Yeah.
Just got to remove them.
And it's got a bull nose on it, we call it, which is, this is for treads for on a staircase. It's got the rounded nose already. We already buy it in, and people use it for shelving and a lot of different things. This is something I found. It's barn. Everybody come in and they wanted something that was dry, uniform, but rustic looking. And this is barn siding. It's rough on one side, and it's finished smooth on one side and 2 edges. And this is one of the cheap. It's got knots in it. It's one of the cheaper pines that I sell, and I sell a lot of. And these big pieces here are for fireplace mantles, something that actually I don't like making. There's a lot of work to them, and you don't get your payment what you should get out of them, because people just don't want to pay the price. So
Right.
you know, the way it goes. Then over here we got our planer apartment, I guess you would call it. This one here we bought when I was, I don't know, 30 years ago. It's a 30-inch wide, single-headed, straight knife planer.
You bought it 30 years ago, but it wasn't brand new when you bought it.
No, this here it's an Oliver. It was American made at the time. It's got markings on it. It says West Virginia. And I think it says, yeah, West Virginia. And I believe the story behind it was they used to use this to plane the lumber that goes on the aircraft carriers, because the aircraft carriers
Had wooden decks, battleships, wooden decks.
They had originally wooden decks, and it came out of a boat shop around the Baltimore area. So it was used in the boat shop. So we bought it. We had to repair it, fix it up. At the time, we could get parts except for the castings, and we've been using it ever since. It's a hog.
But that's back when equipment was made to last.
Oh yeah, this thing is probably from the early 50s, I would say.
Surprised this plate doesn't have a date on it.
I don't even have a date. I don't know.
I don't know. I couldn't read it if I could with my bad eyes.
And it originally, right in here, it had a 10-horse motor on it. And it was directly mounted on the shaft of the planer knives. But for what we did, we were planing green lumber and stuff. It just didn't have the power. It just wasn't enough power. It was underpowered.
So you put that bad
So
boy.
we took the motor off. My brother put a pulley on here, and we cut this bottom part out of the casting. I found this used resaw motor up at the Sawmill supply place. I think it's a 25 horsepower. So it's got plenty of power now. We've been using it that way for, like you say, 20 or 30 years. And then we came along, and originally there was a friend of ours who had a molder here. We didn't, you know, when we heard the word molder, we always thought just it only made moldings. Well, we do a lot of, we're a big little sawmill, but we are versatile where we don't just do sawmill, we also do the dry lumber cabinet finish area. And a lot of times people come here, the majority of the time anymore, they don't have a table saw, and we'll joint one edge, you know, make it square on one edge, or can you make me pieces that are planed up on all four sides? That's where that molder comes in. So
right.
We seen it, hey, if we had one of them, it would save us time and labor. So we bought a molder, we stuck it over here where we could use it in the rainy days. This one here, it was the other guy's molder was sitting here. We have to open up these doors and use it only when the weather's right. So in the meantime, my brother found this double-headed planer in Missouri. I guess about 6 or 7 years ago. And it's got a cutter head on the top and the bottom, and it's a jointer planer, meaning it'll flatten the board. If it's curved, you set enough depth on the bottom cutter, and it'll cut that board flat. And you know, usually a planer like this, it's got a roller, it's segmented. It flattens the board out, and when it's cupped, and then as it comes back out, it cups back up. It's plain on both sides, but it's still got it's
cup
curved.
on it.
This one here, it's got
cuts the curve out of it.
Cuts the curve out of it because it's got a hold down device of little spring fingers. It's like your fingers are holding it, and it'll flatten the bottom of the board, and whatever's left on the other end, it'll take it off the top, and it'll make a flat board for you.
Nice.
Most of the time. And this is a straight knife cutter. These are carbide, those little teeny inserts. They'll last a year, but it takes you a day per head to turn them for the next cutting for the next year. So a lot of maintenance time on that.
You got a radial arm saw?
Got a radial arm. That's just more of a chop saw. Cut people's boards in half. This is our 16-inch joiner. Here we used to have a straight knife. These are the little carbide knives. Each one has a sharp edge. Like I say, they'll last for a year or more, and then you got to turn them. But you got to clean the base off and all that stuff, and that takes a lot of time. And
that's when DeWalt made other than cordless.
Yeah. And it's got a what is that? A 16-inch blade on there, I think. It's not a real accurate square saw. It's just for cutting boards in half. Just a chop saw for us, but it does pretty good. Of course, we're always wearing hearing protection when we do our cutting.
Watch, there's a lip there, hon.
And then we have this machine here. It is a 3-sided planer. We only use the edge planers. We had that before we had the other molder. This one here still can do a 10-inch wide board. And I'll take that barn siding and I'll either tongue and groove it, or I can shiplap it, which is a big thing where they'll use that as a rustic paneling in the house.
Yeah, I love that.
And that kind of a thing. So sometimes they want tongue and groove with V, as when you put it together it makes a V, or they want shiplap. So that machine does a nice wide one. And then we'll go in here to
I keep running my wife over.
Regular new wood or for like old barnwood?
I don't do the old stuff.
Yeah,
I only
okay.
do stuff. And this is, I won't say it's our cabinet shop, but it's our shop for a little more fine-tuned stuff. This is where we would finish a mantle or something. This here is our original
Belt sander.
belt sander. It is a 24-inch wide belt sander. Right there is the belt inside of it. And we got a DeWalt chop saw. And we have a DeWalt table saw. And I'll do some beadwork in here a little bit. And that's pretty much it.
You need to get you one of them Chinese box cut and cut the. You seen those cheap? I call them cheap. Nothing's cheap anymore. But where you put the end of the board and it cuts all the little grooves. Didn't you say Jason has one of those? Bohemia Bees?
Oh, you mean for the
boxes?
Finger joint box?
Yeah, finger joint.
Yeah. They're not.
Your son trying to start up the John Deere.